Hi all, good morning or good afternoon from wherever you're joining. We will just wait a few more moments for the other participants to join and then we'll start right away. All right, I think we're all set. I think we can start. So once again, good morning or good afternoon. I'm very happy to welcome you to today's webinar covering the topic of how you can leverage process mining in order to enhance your RPA journey, joint webinar by Celonis and Capgemini. And before we start, I'd like to introduce to you all my fellow speakers of today. So maybe Jan, you can quickly start and then we just go through the line.
Sure, thanks Claudia. Hi, this is Jan-Malte Prädel speaking. I'm a manager with Capgemini Invent in Germany in the intelligent operations and corporate functions practice. So I deliver on a day-to-day basis intelligent automation projects and apply both process mining and RPA technology. And this is the intersection of technologies that I want to focus on today in the course of this webinar as well.
Perfect, thanks. Then Wolfgang, do you want to go on?
Yes, hello, good morning, good afternoon. This is Wolfgang Enders out of New York City. I'm leading the data and operations and intelligent automation practice for Capgemini Invent in North America. So basically all topics around process mining, RPA, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. The combination of all of these technologies and all of these solutions from a consulting and technology perspective.
Perfect, thank you. And then we have Thomas with us today.
Thank you, Claudia. I'm Thomas Both, and I'm the topic lead for process mining at Capgemini Invent, and I'm basically responsible for the relationship with Celonis as well. So thank you very much for the invitation here.
Yeah, so thanks all of you, and then just I go last. So my name is Claudia. I am a senior data scientist at Celonis, mainly responsible for the technical implementation of our solution at our customers. And one of the topics I'm really focusing on in the past years is RPA. So also very happy to share all the insights and experiences I and my team gathered in these projects in the coming 60 minutes. So what is the plan for the next hour? We will start with a quick motivation of why process mining and automation in general, RPA in particular, actually are a perfect technological fit, to then really show you also how this looks in production and how those two technologies can be actually perfectly matched together. We will then have a quick outlook to some advanced capabilities in Celonis, and in the very end you then will have the possibility to also answer questions. Whenever you have a question in the meantime, please feel free to post it in the chat, and then in the very end we will take the remaining 10 minutes to answer your questions. To also already let you know in advance, in case we will not be able to answer all the questions, we will be very happy to answer them then afterwards and send the answers to you afterwards. Okay, so feel free to ask a question anytime. And with that, let's start right away. So, of course, we're not the first ones who start talking about automation, who start talking about RPA. Yeah? This is a topic which is discussed a lot in the past month, in the past years, and it's a topic that's actually addressed, I would say, in the majority of all companies and organizations. And everyone is talking about, yeah, we should actually automate our processes. Maybe also organizations start talking about how to automate, like which technology to use. But a question that is actually surprisingly rarely discussed is actually which is the best part of the organization to start the automation. And this, however, is a question which is probably the most crucial one. Why is that? Because automation can be a very, very powerful technology, but only if it's used properly and in the right and purposeful way. And one person who put that in really nice words is Bill Gates, who said that automation applied to an efficient operation will magnify the efficiency, but automation applied to an inefficient operation will only magnify the inefficiency. And this really, I think, puts it in really like crisp words of why it's so incredibly important to answer the question of which parts of your organization, which parts of your processes are actually ready and mature enough for being automated, and where would you actually just which parts of the processes would just be like too risky to be automated today. And this is why every automation journey, not only RPA, but every automation journey should have a scout. In the past, well, too few automation journeys had such a scout. And that resulted in many automation journeys failing. And this is not only what I also saw myself in a lot of projects I work with, or companies that then actually look for alternatives of how to do it better next time. But it's something that can be seen across the globe, across all kind of, well, industries, company sizes, and so on. And also to just maybe quote a few other companies here, it's like Deloitte, for example, found that 63% of all RPA projects do not meet the expectations of the time to implement. So it took much longer to implement the bots because it was not really easy to define the requirements properly and to get everything running from the beginning. Also, 50% of all RPA implementations are considered to being failed because they, in the end, didn't have the effect on the processes that everyone hoped for. And lastly, 13% of all RPA adopters are actually, are currently scaled up in industries and industrialized. So only 13%. And for all the others, they feel like that once they started, they had a quick wrap up or a quick start, and then it's really, really hard to scale and accelerate on that. Why is that? Because what we see is a lot of companies, they just start. They feel like everyone is automating, so let's do that as well. Let's just start, let's just try it without putting too much thoughts into it from the very beginning. And now this is exactly where we, as Celonis, with our technology, come in and support our customers. And with the help of our solution, we managed to reduce the overall implementation time, to reduce the project risk, or to say it in other words, to improve the success rate of those automation projects, and largely also of managing and setting everything up in a way so that it's sustainable and can also be scaled up really easily in the future. How do we do that? We do that with our solution, which is an end-to-end process mining platform. And we do that with the help of our partners. So RPA indeed is a topic that we're working on for quite a while already. And we're not only having numerous projects in that area, but we're even partnering with the leading RPA vendors, which you can also see here, namely UiPath, Blue Prism, and Automation Anywhere, which we have technology partnerships with, so that we can also have technological integrations between our solution and the bots, as you will see in a few minutes. In addition, we're closely partnering with a lot of experts around the world, like Capgemini, who will in a few minutes also show their process they developed and how they are applying Celonis within their framework. And now, what is it that we offer? I just already said, it is an end-to-end process mining platform, which we call the Intelligent Business Cloud, which as a core has our very powerful process mining technology. But, well, around the technology, it brings everything with it that you need in order to successfully deploy process mining in your organization. So really everything you'll need from A to Z, from all the technological aspects, but also the content that you need, as you will also see in a few seconds. But before we're going to show this, also in the solution itself, I'd like to hand it over to Capgemini again, because as I said, we are not here only as Celonis today, and we could also not do it, what you will see in a few minutes alone, and without the comprehensive expertise from our partner. So, Wolfgang, I'd like to hand over to you.
Thank you, Claudia. Thank you very much. Yeah. Overall, our global and multidisciplinary team serves clients in 15 countries and more than 30 offices spread all over the world. From a consulting perspective, we deliver end-to-end solutions from strategy to implementation, addressing the needs of the CXO agenda. When it comes to process mining, we have experts in every region working closely with the Celonis teams and building leading-edge solutions from a consulting and a tech perspective. This is what we see in the market. This is what our clients are looking for, to combine the best of both worlds for these kind of projects, especially within process mining. From a delivery model on a global basis, we are able to deliver onshore and also offshore. Basically, we run our projects in an onshore and offshore resource model, building the most suitable and efficient process mining solutions for our clients. And especially talking about North America, the market I'm leading for Capgemini Invent, we have a strong footprint in North America supporting the clients in their process mining journey, with all the key components around the operating model, the software setup, the process analysis, identification, implementation of optimization levers, and also the continuous improvement, basically from a proof of value to the large scale implementations. And additionally, as I also said at the beginning, we also bring together all the other capabilities around intelligent automation when it comes to robotics, process automation, when it comes to machine learning, AI solutions, which work very, very well in the combination with process mining, but also on top of process mining as a holistic overall package supporting our clients and building the next phase of innovation around process automation and process innovation. Handing over to Thomas, who will give you a little bit more insights around our capabilities and how we work together.
Thank you, Wolfgang. As you already mentioned, we basically have a broad spectrum of deliveries regarding process mining, utilizing the strong software of Celonis. First and foremost, we have true end-to-end capabilities in process mining, meaning that from the mining ideation or process ideation all the way to the process delisting and retiring, we facilitate the process mining implementation and the scaling of process mining within the organization. So basically development as well as operations. You already addressed the intelligent automation as well. So we usually bring in experts from other fields where we see synergies together with process mining. for example, AI, for example, business process management, but also today's topic, RPA, of course. Everyone who has done a pilot or has done the technical work of process mining knows that it is crucial to know the underlying source systems. In that case, for example, Capgemini is maintaining over 15,000 certified SAP consultants worldwide. That does not mean that the solution is only focused on SAP, but that means that we heavily utilize the ERP, the knowledge regarding the ERP technologies. And as process mining itself is not changing the process, we utilize relevant industry and process experts from Capgemini to bring the technology into value generation. So basically, this is our technological expertise, but then also on a strategic and operative level, we bring in our transformation and management consultants, building, for example, target operating models, setting up process mining structure, the process mining structure to really generate value in all aspects throughout the whole organization. All right, Claudia, then it's back to you.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. So this is us. And now, as promised, we'll also show you how this really looks in a production setting or in a project and how those two technologies really work together. And for that, I'd like to hand over to Jan, who will exactly guide you through the end-to-end journey.
So thank you for the introduction. Let me spend a little more time on some theory of how we integrate RPA and process mining. Before then, Claudia will show you a live demo in the Celonis system, how this works in practice. So most of you are probably very familiar with the RPA technology. That is why I will only spend a couple of words on this. So RPA is a software that simulates user interaction on user interface level and therefore offers a way to automate processes. It has its origin in the automotive industry, who has very standardized and automated assembly lines, and then was thinking about how to transfer this knowledge into their back office functions. And that is where RPA technology initially comes from. So this works very well if you respect certain criteria in the design of the solution. So you should have predefined rules that you clearly can specify for certain process. It should be a very manual process with a lot of manual tasks that shall be automated and which is occurring in a repeated way over and over again multiple times. If you do that, then you basically require no programming and even no customization of the underlying systems, but it's basically on top on the user interface level and can actually handle information from a lot of different source systems. So with that being said, RPA is a very fast technology that can be implemented cost efficient, but as well robust if you do it right, and therefore it's scalable and can be scaled on a lot of processes and even on a lot of very high volume of processes. So this is in brief an introduction of the RPA technology. Next slide, please, Claudia. So as Claudia pointed out already, RPA can be very powerful on its own, standalone as a solution, but there are even challenges to overcome. And we as Capgemini have developed idea to robot lifecycle with which we orchestrate our RPA delivery. And you see just here on this slide. This framework is our framework for taking ideas into candidates for RPA, which are then qualified and taken into a backlog of agile RPA development, then turns into artifacts which are then executed and even operated and maintained. And Capgemini is offering the end-to-end lifecycle to its clients. So let me briefly walk you through this lifecycle, which is separated into 3 phases: design, build, and run. And within each of these phases, we have process steps. So the first step would be ideate and assess. So generating ideas on automation, so which process steps could be automated, and then qualify these ideas. As I was briefly introducing, there are certain criteria that should be respected. So standardization, a number of process variants, a number of exceptions, and even the volume which is being processed, in order to then decide on whether this candidate shall be documented, which is usually a process definition document, being created by either companies' business employees or consultants, which are business analysts. And then once this process documentation is completed, you really enter the build phase. You start preparing the development, which means setting up the development environment, but even setting up the user rights for accessing the applications that you plan to automate with a robot user, in order to then have a final build decision if all of this works out well. So then you enter the design and build phase, where you really execute the development and build the bot. And in parallel, while doing so, we strongly recommend to create even a robot documentation. Even though we are in agile mode here, we want to document how to later operate and maintain this robot once it is in production. Then a usual test and hypercare phase is the next one. So have developer tests, system tests, and even integration tests, but as well, and very important, and user acceptance test with the business. So does the robot perform as initially imagined? Does it perform its job very well? And if yes, all of this is confirmed, then it can be moved into production. And with that, you move into the run phase, which consists of maintenance and operation of bots. So bot specifics would be a scheduling of bots. So when shall they perform their action, in which sequence and how often, for example. But even a typical incident management process, usual software incident management process once these robots do not perform as initially designed, and application release management, so rolling out new versions of, for example, the underlying RPA software. And then there's a final step, the delisting step, so a recurring stock take of the robots that are in production, considering whether you want to shift them to RDA, so robotic desktop automation, which is special vehicle for very niche robots, which are only performed by a couple of users, and then even think about retiring robots once they are not needed anymore. So this is the idea to robot lifecycle that we use for orchestrating our RPA programs. And next slide, please, Claudia. The users amongst you who apply already RPA on large scale know about the challenges even within those very structured and orchestrated formats. And here we think that Celonis Process Mining can really add additional benefit on top of this very structured approach. So let me walk you through 4 ideas. The first one is on idea generation. So of course, I'm not aware of how you do this within your organizations, but a usual approach is to have ideation workshops, for example, with businesses, which is a very subjective approach, which works out well. But at some point in time, once you have harvested all the low-hanging fruits, you will maybe experience that the funnel of automation ideas decreases in volume, and you need advice on the next best automation or next best use case. And here Celonis kicks in, because as you will just see in a couple of minutes, there is a very structured and data-driven approach for identification of next use cases and use case ideas. As well, for documentation, you know that you rely on the availability and even willingness of the business divisions. So of course, there are even fears when RPA is introduced into an organization, and they may even be reluctant to support you in your endeavors. So here there is a new feature, task mining, with Celonis, which supports the process documentation approach very well and very nicely, and which in the end will turn out to produce better process definition or more complete process definition at little time, which is very, very beneficial as well for RPA projects. When it then comes to development, you may face the situation that there are multiple ways of how to implement a specific automation. And here, Celonis can give you very fact-based KPIs to decide which version of your implementation is performing better, in order to then to decide which to continue with and which to finalize. And finally, on the right-hand side, for monitoring robot performance, the usual approach is to measure efficiency gains in reduced workload, which is working well, but there's even a lot of benefit beyond that that is usually very hard to measure. So for example, quality improvements, reduction of throughput times and stuff like that. And with process mining, you have a way to visualize this with KPIs and even compare over time how your implementation of, for example, RPA automation has improved the underlying processes. Okay, so this was it in a nutshell. I hope I made clear that there's a lot of benefit from integrating process mining with RPA. So let us now exit the theory and have a look into a practical system of Celonis and see how this all turns out in practice. So handing over again to Claudia.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. Yes. And with that, I'm very happy to finally go to the solution itself. And to begin with, I, of course, also want to start at a stage where you would to start. It's like installing Celonis and getting ready. So some of you might already use Celonis, might already have a running instance and are rather interested in how do I get it running now also for RPA. Some of you might not be using it as of today and might also wonder, okay, well, what does it actually take now to also use that? And do I need to implement a second technology now also on top of it as well? Good news is, so no, there's no other major implementation project required, but actually the setup of Celonis is quite easy, as we bring a lot of out-of-the-box content for all kind of different topics, and also among a lot of other topics, out-of-the-box content for RPA. We offer that as part of our App Store, which is an integrated part of our solution. And you can indeed imagine that App Store to be like an App Store on your iPhone, only that in our App Store, you don't get newspapers or any games, but you get processes and analyses for that. And to show you one example, I already filtered on a specific process, which we will focus on for this demo, which is a classic purchase to pay SAP process. However, we also have those contents for many, many more other source systems, many other processes in place. I also already filtered on the RPA content, and now you indeed see, okay, so for SAP P2P, there are two out-of-the-box RPA contents available. And so I simply select this. In this case, I do have my data in Celonis already. And now I simply select that app and install it. And then it's available on my data right away. And I can start with the analysis of my process. And now for the live demo, we also do a very, very quick journey through that entire idea to robot lifecycle that we've just seen. So back to the start, where we really want to understand now, where actually do we have the largest potential for the usage of RPA? It might be that you've not even started with RPA at all, and you really want to understand, okay, where to start. Or maybe you already have some bots in place and now wonder, okay, so you kind of have a basis, but now where to continue? Like, what's the next idea? And of course, we don't just want to start anywhere in the process, right? We have basically two kind of thoughts that we should keep in mind. The first one is really making sure that we choose a part of the process or process which is mature enough, which is ready and suited for RPA. And Jan already described that a bit, so it should be a standard process, which is highly manual today, and so on. And second, and even more importantly, is we of course want to start with the low-hanging fruits. We just don't want to start anywhere with RPA. We want to start in those parts of our organization, those parts of our processes where we have the largest savings potential by applying RPA. And this might not really easy to find, but it is easy with the help of Celonis. So how do we do that? You see, now I have that standard app, and you even get a manual with it, so a few explanations. For now, I will take over the explanation, but in case you not always have a Celonis or Capgemini colleague with you, it's everything in there really nicely documented. And we of course start with a first look at the process itself. So for those of you who might not be familiar with process mining itself, what we see here now is a pure visualization of system data. So the process that you see here, it's not modeled or anything like that. So also when I implement the solution at customers, I don't do anything to the process. I basically just put the data into Celonis. And then this is a completely objective, completely transparent view of what actually happens in your organization. And as I said, this is an example of purchase to pay. So we see purchase requisition, purchase order, goods received, invoice, and so on. And at the moment, what we see here looks super lean, super standard. But this is because what we see here at the moment only is the most common variant that we detected in the system. But overall, for this time frame, which is 12 months, more than 655 different variants of only this one process have been detected. And also, to be very honest and very clear with you, this is a number so low, I've never seen such a low number in reality. Usually, you see at least a 4-digit number here. Yeah, so I've never seen a company which only has 655 variants, even the small companies which do not have so many cases. And out of these 655 different ways of processing and purchase order, the most common one only covers 40%. Now, why is this view so incredibly important for RPA? Because we just said, for RPA, it's very, very crucial that you select a process that is standardized enough. And in order to understand it, we of course need to understand the full complexity, the full picture of our process, and or very precisely understand then which parts can be automated. And so we very easily get a feeling of also how many variants, for example, does it take to cover 50% of the cases. So in this case, we see that it takes 2 variants to cover 50% of all purchase orders. It takes, as we've just seen, 5 variants to cover 75% of all our purchase orders. And once again, I've never seen such a standardized process in reality. So more realistic would be that it's rather 20-25 different variants to cover something between 50 and 75%. Yet it's really, really important to precisely understand how standardized is it, how many variants do you need to take into account to cover a certain percentage of your process, and also how exactly do the first and main variants look like. To even make this a bit more specific for RPA, we start our assessment with, as I said, first of all, understanding which activities in our process now would be suited for RPA. And for that, we enrich that process view with all kind of additional information that we can take from the system. And now, in order to understand which of those parts here would be actually suited, we want to understand what's the today's manual rate and how often is an activity actually happening. So now you see that everything is a bit colored here. What we see here, those percentage numbers, is today's manual rate. So how many of these activities are carried out or are performed by a manual user. And we immediately see, with only one glance, that we have some activities which are quite automated today already, like sending a purchase order, recording invoice receipt. But we also have large parts of our processes being still quite manual today. And so in order to understand where we want to focus on, where we want to start on, we of course want to select those which have a very high manual rate today, but also which are performed very, very often. So we want to concentrate on those activities that we find up here in the right upper corner. And we immediately see that one activity sticks out in particular, which is the creation of a purchase order item with a manual rate of 72% today and being performed more than 800,000 times within this 1 year. Okay, so we immediately see, okay, maybe let's choose the creation of the purchase order item for now as an activity which could be of interest. Now, of course, this is not only the only criteria, the high manual rate. But now we mentioned it a couple of times. It's also important that the process is standardized enough. So now we need to understand actually also where is this activity coming from, where is it going to? And so I just select the activity that I just mentioned, the creation of the purchase order item, the activity of interest. And now I immediately understand, okay, what is the process flow or what are the process flows related to that activity? And in this case, I'm very, very lucky because now for the creation of the purchase order item, there indeed is one flow which is happening very, very often, and thus we can consider it to be quite standardized. And this is this flow here from the creation of a purchase requisition item to the creation of the corresponding order item. We also see there are a few other flows related to that which are less common. So we also have classical maverick buying, we first have an invoice, or also some changes. Which then, of course, are not the ones we're interested in, as we want to go with the really clearly standardized one. So we immediately identify the process flow. And of course, also, as we know, this is a task which is perfectly suited for RPA, as it's very standardized. It basically requires just that a lot of information that you have in the requisition item already are transferred to the purchase order item. So it would be perfectly suited for RPA. Now, what we also get, I just say you want to start with those cases where you have the highest potential savings. And we get immediate insights on the estimated saving potentials in case you apply automation or RPA to that specific flow, meaning that in the future, a certain percentage of these activities will be performed automatically. In order now to also really precisely configure the bots themselves, you have the possibility to get some further information, some further, just background information. You might be interested in now which are the vendors which are well related to that specific flow in particular. So vendors for which you have a lot of purchase requisitions, or what is the affected material group, maybe also some other dimensions which might be relevant for the implementation and configuration of the bot. And again, Celonis is a way of providing all these information very easily, very quickly, and completely objectively. Yeah, and once again, all the estimated savings. So now we have the new idea. Okay, we actually really identified where do we have the largest potential. We are 100% sure that this process flow is suited. So now we start implementing the bots. Everything is running. And now we have the bots in place. And now it's not only about having these bots, and having them configured in the best optimal way. But now, as a next step, we also want to run these bots as efficiently and ideally as possible. And if you remember, a few minutes ago, I mentioned that we have technology partnerships with all of the leading RPA vendors. And now this allows us to not only support in this perfect configuration, but it supports us to intelligently trigger the bots whenever it's needed for the process and to run the process as smoothly and efficiently as possible. What do I mean by that? For that, I'd like to introduce you to another component of our solution, also just an integrated part. You saw that it's really an end-to-end platform with a lot of different parts and components. And another one of these components I'd like to introduce to you today is so-called Action Engine. The Action Engine, just like everything else, also goes through all the data, which is in Celonis. It interprets the data, it identifies inefficiencies, patterns, and so on. And based on that, it automatically creates intelligent recommendations of what to do next. For both, of course, like human users, really enabling everyone in your organization to work smarter and always take the right action at the right time, but also recommendations for bots, as you can see here, to also enable the bots to always take the right action at the right point of time whenever it is needed. To give you an example, we'll stick with the process flow we just selected. So we have the purchase requisition to the purchase order. Now this perfectly works whenever you have this purchase requisition, you have all the information you need in there, and you can just kind of copy and paste it to the purchase order. Okay, then this works perfectly. But whoever already used a bot in this part of the process will also know, okay, as soon as you do not have the perfect information in the purchase requisition, then again, a manual user needs to come in and needs to do it nevertheless manually. Now, this is a typical example for why so many then RPA ideas, which in the beginning sounded so nice, fail, because then, well, just not the necessary information in the purchase requisition. How do we tackle that problem? So, a very common problem is that you have free text purchase requisitions. Yeah, and so then the bot is not able alone to find the corresponding material number, can't work, you need the manual user. With Celonis, instead, we take over that part. So what the Action Engine does is it finds that there is a purchase requisition which just has a free text. So the bot is not able to convert it yet. So now the Action Engine goes through all the data and intelligently matches this free text to the corresponding material number. So what we find is we have that free text in here. And the Action Engine suggests that in order to then also actually process it automatically with the new bot, we first of all need to convert that free text order to a catalog order using the following material number and so on. And now we can actually do that automatically. We can trigger that intelligently, automatically, and then also the next following bot can convert the purchase requisition to the purchase order completely automatically, and the process is as automatic as you want it to be, because you'll make sure that you also have all the relevant information. Just as one example, and as I said, how are we able to do that? Because we indeed then have integrations to the bots so that we can trigger that again. This works with UiPath, Blue Prism, and Automation Anywhere as of today. So far so good. Now we have the bots running. They work very intelligently. Now we also, just one last step, we want to continuously monitor them in order to also understand sometimes a bot might not be necessary anymore, or we also want to understand, does it actually have the impact on our process that we were hoping for? And so as a last step, we continuously monitor the process and also the effect of the bots on it. So what we see here is just another standard analysis. And now this is a bit later when more bots have been implemented. And here we also see the development over time. So here, this like mid blue, so to say, it's the manual rate, which we see decreased over time. Light blue, we have the backend automation rate, which stayed almost like, constant over time. And in dark blue, we see the robot rate, which increased in the past few months. To understand now what the impact of this is, we can just compare the process prior to the robot usage and after to the robot implementation. So here on the left, we have, well, the first half of the year as an example, where we saw, okay, the bot rate actually has not been that high yet, only 12% of bots used, whereas on the right, we then rather see the process for the second half of the year, where we then have a, well, almost twice as high robot rate here. And in this company, indeed, everything turned out very, very well, because what we see, it's really nicely, so the cycle time itself is reduced by 1 day, but even more importantly, the average cost per purchase order was decreased by almost $3 per purchase order item. Okay, so within only like this 6 months, they managed to decrease the average cost by $3 by actually implementing very purposeful bots in exactly those parts of the processes where they had the highest saving potentials. And of course, now we monitor this continuously. So Celonis also is a solution which is continuously looking at the processes in real time to always be able to really just take the data-based and fact-based decisions on where to apply bots, where to keep the bots, where to then maybe kind of shut them down, where to put the next one, generate new ideas, additional ones, and so on. Of course, not only in the P2P process, but across your entire organization. I hope you got a firm, good idea of how it looks like very roughly. Now, jumping back to the presentation, I also promised to just give you a very, very short outlook, and I'll keep it very short to at least leave some time for a couple of questions. Before I go there, just one more remark. This is not something that only works in theory, but which is applied by many Celonis customers already. Many customers that are already combining RPA and Celonis. Also, if you visit our website, you will see that there are a lot of webinars also from customers which are very happy to talk about the experiences they made with combining those two technologies. As Siemens really said that RPA is a great companion to process mining if in the desire to drive further automation, and they indeed actually are following the entire end-to-end RPA journey as we've just discussed it, really starting with discovering the automation potential and then to the very end. I said there are many more examples which also can be seen at the Celonis webpage, for example. So just a very short outlook on what's coming next. I mentioned that we really offer that end-to-end platform, and there are many more components in there which I could not show within this very short demo. Still, there are 2 more things I really like to at least briefly mention. In order to support the perfect configuration of the bots, of course, it's not only important to understand what happens within the system, but also, or in the backend, but also what happens in the front end, or what happens outside the IT system. And a lot of also, of course, the RPA vendors themselves, they also offer recorders for that. But we even enrich them by now not only looking at the data which is coming from the system itself, so more like the backend data, but really combining those with user interaction and data, and thereby providing a holistic 360-degree look on your processes. How do we do that? With another technology that is also then part of the solution. It's called task mining. And now this task mining is indeed able to collect the user interaction data, now to combine those user interaction data with the IT system data, and thereby you really understand your processes 360 degree, which of course you can imagine is so super valuable for configuring your bots and exactly and precisely understand what the bots need to do. In case a bot might not be the perfect solution, sometimes back-end automation is just the better version because front-end automation is not possible. You might use the Celonis Process Automation as an alternative. Okay, so RPA is really perfectly suited for everything, front-end automation, which is highly standardized, which is just, as we said before, it's just like the automatic FTE. But sometimes it just back-end automation is required. And for that, Celonis also offers our process automation, which allows you to really implement automatic workflows, which then can be performed in the different source systems, again, really easily without any programming skills required. So I know that was a very brief outlook, but now, well, happy to provide more details on that than in the answers. So that's from my side, just a very short outlook in what we can do. And I'd like to hand it over to Jan one last time, and then we'll be happy to start answering the first questions.
Yeah, so thank you, Claudia, for the very inspirational demo you have given. So I just suppose that we leave the slide open. I will not go through all the details yet, but rather have a view on the question. So I think the basic idea came across brilliantly. RPA on its own is very powerful already, but with process mining and Celonis Process Mining, you have an option to even add additional benefit to that. So now let's have a look at your questions. Please keep them coming, even though we will not cover all of them now. We are happy to answer them via email later on. So please continue entering additional questions. Maybe to cover a larger part of questions, yes, there will be a follow-up email for you to provide you with the slides, but even the recording of this meeting so that you can recap on it. That will be shared after the webinar. So how many variants can a single bot cover is one of the first questions. So this depends. So you can design the bot the way you want it. However, there is a trade-off between covering additional variants and implementation duration, cost, and complexity. So what we as Capgemini usually suggest is to first have a look at other optimization measures before robotization. So for example, elimination of process steps or variants which are not needed or not wanted, optimization or standardization of certain process steps in order to really lower the number of variants before you consider RPA implementation. So you want to limit the complexity basically of your implementation, and this is the way you can do. Then there is a question on do you build a bot for each process step and then link them together? So yes, there is a best practice to have a very modular approach for RPA development and then bundle them in like a master robot, so as to say. Again, the level of detail in which you want to break up a process depends. So for example, number of underlying systems which the process relies on, if there are any handovers between those systems. So this determines in how many process steps you want to break up the bot. But yes, in general, you do so. You break it up into smaller pieces, which are then even can be reused in other bots. So for example, an SAP login can be reused in a lot of bots, and you just need to implement it once if you do it in a modular approach. So this is definitely best practice. Then I think, Claudia, this one is for you. So how do you know when an activity is manual or not in the Process Explorer?
So this also depends on the underlying source system. there are many systems like SAP, which just store the information about the user type. So systems like SAP, they really store the information of whether a user was a batch user, for example, an automatic user, or just a manual user like us. For those systems which do not store the information about the user type itself, we just actually do that configuration as part of the Celonis implementation. So we just define once which user is considered to be manual and which is an automatic user, so that we then can do that exercise. But as said, especially for SAP and similar systems, it's really easy as they store this information.
Perfect, thanks. Maybe you just want to go on and answer the question, how do you allocate a cost to an activity?
Mm-hmm. So this is actually a combination of just two or like three assumptions. So based on Celonis, we exactly see how often this activity was performed, so the exact number. We then actually enrich it with a combination of both system data, but also the input from the process experts of how long an individual step takes. And then the last information that's just needed is like what's the annual manual or the cost for manual work, and then we can derive the costs for a specific process step by that. So it's mainly depending on or based on process data with a small input from a process expert.
Mm-hmm. So maybe one last question. Let's see, maybe we can tackle two. So can Celonis Action Engine manage bot loads? So for example, to maximize the bot licenses and usage. Do you want to cover that, or shall?
What do you mean
by
by
the bot loads? So maximize bot license and usage. So RPA software usually comes with orchestration components for larger implementations. So for example, UiPath has the orchestrator, which can be used to manage bot licenses and even bot usage. Is the Action Engine linked to that feature as well?
So indeed, we do have a link to, for example, the UiPath orchestrator. So the two solutions are technologically linked. Will be happy to actually come back to that and answer it in email, as I'm not 100% sure whether we also cover this specific functionality. But there is a technological link between those, yes.
Yeah, definitely, and I can confirm that the RPA software vendors provide quite good features on that as well. So it will be covered in there too. So and then Celonis links to that solution. Okay, so there are some more questions, but the time is up. So we will be happy again to answer all of your questions via email after the webinar. So thank you very much for listening, and thank you very much for raising all of these questions. Maybe Claudia, just go to the next slides in order to have the contact details of the Capgemini Invent contacts, but even the Celonis contact Claudia. So these slides will be shared with you so that you have our contacts, but we will approach you with answers to the questions you have just raised in course of the webinar. So thank you very much, Claudia, for this very interesting walkthrough.
Thank you. Thanks all for joining, and I wish you all a very nice evening or rest of the day, and would be happy to answer your questions and hopefully hear from you soon. So thanks to everyone and have a nice day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.